I mentioned in the Introduction to Relativism lecture that relativism relies on two fundamental assumptions. One of those assumptions is that there exists an infinite number of interpretations. In other words, theoretically, we could have an infinite number of people existing over an infinite amount of time, and they would all have their own unique perceptions and impressions of the way that things are. The second assumption that relativism relies on is that there doesn't exist any objective standard that we could use to judge all of those different interpretations of things. Therefore, we don't have any basis on which to claim that some interpretations are more accurate or more true than other interpretations. Now, with regards to epistemological relativism, right? Relativism that says you can't have knowledge about anything other than your own interior experiences and perceptions of things, I think there's an easy way to refute this assumption. So imagine it's breakfast time. We're sitting across the table from one another, and I'm debating about what I should have. Should I have an apple? Or should I have a nice bowl of plutonium? And you say, whoa, hold on. Why are you even considering the plutonium? That's not good for you. And I turn to you and I say, that's just your opinion. And you'd say, well, no, it's not just my opinion. I know enough about plutonium as an objective thing, and I know enough about the human body as an objective thing to know that you shouldn't have the bowl of plutonium for breakfast. That would be wrong. That seems to be fairly common sense, right? And so we've identified at least one objective standard that we can use to refute one of the central assumptions of epistemological relativism, and that is that survival is a value that we can use to evaluate different kinds of claims about reality. Okay. Now, extend this out to ethical relativism. Okay. Why would we save the person who's drowning? Why would we not break our promises? Why not steal from people? Or why not help kids who are in need? Okay. Those are the questions that the ethical relativist has to answer. And we know what the answer is from the subjectivist, emotivist, and cultural relatives perspective. Is there an objective standard that we could use to answer these questions about moral obligations that we might have? I've linked in the Canvas site an essay by a very famous philosopher named Thomas Nagel. I can't remember the name of it now. I think it's The Objective Basis of Morality or something along those lines. And in this essay, he argues there is an objective basis for your moral claims. It's not just all about what you think or how you feel or what your culture says. There is objective truth related to morality. And to illustrate his point, or to argue his point, he offers the following example. He said, imagine it's raining outside and you need to go to the library. So you grab your umbrella when you leave home and you walk down to the library. And when you walk through the doors of the library, you put the umbrella in the little umbrella container by the front door, and then you head off into the bookstacks. And then sometime later, you decide it's time for you to leave, and you've discovered that somebody has stolen your umbrella. And he asks us, well, how would you feel in that case? What would you think about this situation that you find yourself in? And he says, and I think he's probably right, you'd be angry. In fact, what he says is you would resent the way you've been treated. And what he means is this. What he means is you think it's wrong for somebody to simply take your possessions without your permission. And you would feel like you've been wronged. And so Nagel says, okay, so think about that for a moment. You believe it's possible for someone to wrong you. You believe it's possible for somebody to do something immoral to you. And what Nagel says is this, is that if ethics is not simply about emotion, then it's about claims, and it's about facts, and it's about thoughts, it's about ideas. And the most important thing when we're looking at facts and ideas and thoughts is reason, rationality. We want to see how these ideas rationally relate to one another or rationally contradict one another. In other words, we want to think about our ideas logically. So we're going to treat reason as the most important feature of our ethical considerations and deliberations. And he says this, he says, one of the central features of logic is that you have to be consistent. You can't be contradicting yourself. So if you believe that it's possible for somebody to wrong you by taking your umbrella without your permission, then to be logically consistent, you would have to also agree that it would be wrong for you to take somebody else's umbrella without their permission. So if I'm looking at that container where my umbrella has been stolen from and I see somebody else's umbrella, if I think it was wrong for that person to take my umbrella, then I would have to think it's wrong for me to take somebody else's umbrella without their permission. Unless there's a reason to be partial. In other words, what Nagel says is You have to treat other people the way that you want to be treated in similar situations. But if there's a morally relevant distinction between your situation or between you and another person or their situation, then maybe you can justify inconsistent treatment, right? So let's say that two people steal a candy bar, or they take a candy bar without paying for it, from a convenience store. And one person has taken this candy bar just because they didn't want to pay for it and they wanted to eat the candy bar. The other person took the candy bar because they saw somebody going into a diabetic coma down the street and they didn't have any money or enough time to, even if they did have the money, to pay for the candy bar. So they just go in, they grab it, and they run down the street to give this person the candy bar and save their life. Well, we might not regard those people as having committed the same, we might not regard those people as having moral equivalency. In other words, we might judge the person who stole a candy bar just to avoid paying for it as to having done something immoral, but the person who stole it to save somebody's life is actually having done something moral, even though they did the same thing, okay? Now, apply this kind of thinking to ethical relativism, and we see, well, look, now I've identified two standards that are objective that I can use to evaluate competing moral claims: survival and logical consistency. And it's not just my opinion that the person who stole the candy bar to save the person's life did a moral thing and the other person did an immoral thing. I can justify these moral claims using my capacity for reason. Okay, so now we apply this to our situation of the desert island, okay? Would any of these actions, killing a person, stealing food, bullying a person, would any of these actions be morally justifiable? Well, use Nagel's rubric here. Would you be okay with the people on the island doing any of these things to you? And if not, can you identify a morally meaningful difference between you and all of these other people on the island? Because if you can't, then to be logically consistent, you would have to say, well, if I think it's wrong to do these things to me, it would be wrong for me to do those things to others, unless I can think of a morally relevant distinction between me and those others.